Good evening, folks. I hope this finds you well and having a good day, enjoying the beautiful weather, 80-something degrees here in Kansas. Had a great day. I brought some kids to the music school in Topeka and got to sing and didn't have any vegetables thrown at me from my horrible voice, so that was good. Some great fellowship and seeing people I haven't seen in a while, and great conversation on the way there and back, and had some fun with the kids and captains. Um, my last video that I did, somebody had asked me about some free acts of kindness that we could do that didn't cost money or a lot of money. And I gave a few examples. Um, but I did a little bit more investigating, and I want to go over some of the, a couple of the things that Jesus did, that we can follow in his example. Um, I want to take a second to consider if we were describing our world today, would we describe it as a kind world? I mean, think about it. You drive along the highway during rush hour, or basically any time in Kansas City, St. Louis, Houston, Dallas. Um, People are always in a hurry, try to cut each other off, try to get waited on in a crowded store. Or, you know, we have really come to expect violence in a lot of things. Um, Even in sports, I mean, football, basketball, hockey especially has violence. Um, in fact, the only sport that I really know of, and I don't even know if that's considered a sport anymore, that doesn't have a lot of violence in it, um, is figure skating. Um, I heard a story not too long ago. I do not remember who told me, uh, but it was about a woman who was standing at a bus stop. She had just cashed her check and gotten her taxes back, so she had a little bit of extra money. And she was nervous about that because she was carrying quite a bit more than what she was normally did. And as she was looking around, she noticed a shabbily dressed man standing close by. And as she watched him, she saw a man walk up to him and hand him some money and whisper something in his ear. And she was so touched by that act of kindness that she decided to do the same. And in a burst of great enthusiasm, she walked over to the gentleman. She handed him a $10 bill and said, "Never, never despair. God will always take care of you." The next day she went to the bus stop, and there this gentleman was again. But this time he walked up to her and handed her $110. Dumbfounded, she asked, "What is this?" He said, "You won, lady. Never despair. Paid 10 to 1. Now, I can't promise that every act of kindness will pay 10 to 1. At times it may even cost you something and require sacrifices. At that in mind, we're going to look today at Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 56. But I'm not going to read them all at once. What I'm going to do is I kind of want to break it down a little bit. in this passage, we're going to see Jesus showing kindness to two different people. One is a man and the other is a woman. One is an outcast. One is poor and unknown. One is rich and influential and the ruler of a synagogue. And yet Jesus treats them both the same with great kindness. By the time of these stories, Jesus had gained a lot of fame and was at the high point of his popularity, I guess you'd like to say. People had a lot of respect for him as a healer and a teacher. Crowds were swarming around him wherever he went. In fact, this is the times when Jesus had to sneak off just to get some time to rest and to pray and rejuvenate himself and get some energy. Despite the pressures of the popularity that Jesus had and the crowds constantly pushing in around him, Jesus showed kindness. He stopped everything he was doing to help them and to meet their needs. There was a quote that Cal Thomas once wrote, and it said, "Love talked about is easily ignored, but love demonstrated is irresistible." And to me, that fits Jesus perfectly. He not only talked about love and kindness, but he modeled it for us too, constantly. So we're going to look at a couple ways that Jesus showed his kindness. And first of all, I want to read Luke 8:40 and 41. Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, ruler of the synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him. Now, we're not told where Jesus was going as the story began. Probably he was on to way to some open place where he could teach and preach to these crowds that were surging him, and that was something very important to do. Which leads me to a question here. How well do you do with interruptions? How do you handle them? Some people work best when they can concentrate on one thing and see it through to the end. And they don't normally do well when 2 or 3 different things come at you at once. So they're concentrating and somebody interrupts and they consider that an intrusion. They don't normally handle it very well, and possibly you don't either, or possibly you can handle that. You have the strength and the mentality to do that. As we get older, we have a tendency to learn that sometimes the intrusions are sent by God, opportunities to minister that you would miss if you ignored them. If you just go on with your project and don't allow yourself to be interrupted, and if you're not flexible enough to change direction and go in another way, you'll miss great opportunities that God has placed before you to serve in his ministry. Excuse me. Now, Jesus paid attention to Jairus and changed his plan in his direction. But Jairus wasn't the only interruption. And Jesus, being flexible and kind enough to pause and meet another need as they were on their way to Jairus' house. Let's read 43 and 46 through 46. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Now there were crowds of people surrounding him, and everyone was in a hurry. Yet Jesus was able to differentiate between the touch of the crowd and the personal touch of the woman who needed his help. And our world is becoming more and more impersonal, is it not? Um, Go to a gas station. You don't have to talk to an attendant anymore. You put a card in, you fill up your tank, you put it in, pull it out, grab the receipt, get in the car, leave. Don't talk to nobody. Banks are the same way. Drive up, pop a few numbers in. You don't even have to go in and talk to the tellers anymore. Um, if you call the airlines in any major city, you hear a computer voice. If you want information regarding departing flights, push 1. For arriving, push 2. Can you imagine what would happen if they did this to 911? You'll be now 911 here. If this is a murder, push 1. A burglary, push 2. If the burglar's still in the house, push 3. No, if he has a gun, push 4 real quick. I don't know what we're coming to. It's a very impersonal world. But Jesus took time to stop in the midst of a crowd to give a woman his personal attention as though she was the only person there. Oh, then he expressed his kindness by affirming her. In verse 47 and 48 tells us, Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him, and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Though her self-esteem must have been so low, as it could possibly be. So Jesus affirms her. He affirms her first of all by listening to her story. I think we have a very condensed version of the story that she told. I mean, she's got 12 years of history to tell. This is the first time she's had anyone's attention really in a long time. So I can imagine that she poured out her heart and Jesus listened. And by looking at her in the face, by clinging to her, he affirmed her. And we can apply that again yet to ourselves. Are we a good listener? Most of us probably aren't. We pass each other and say, how are you, and expect an automatic, I'm fine. And when you get caught off guard and somebody really tells you how they feel, it shocks you for a minute. Irma Bombeck told about a time when she was so tired of listening. She had listened to her son tell in minute detail about a movie he had just seen, punctuated by at least 1,000 okay. Then she received several telephone calls filled with mindless chatter that never seemed to end. So it was a relief when she was able to tell the last caller, I have to rush to get a flight. I can't talk, I'm sorry. She got in the cab, and as the cab driver took her to the airport, he told her all about his son, who had won a scholarship to college and making straight A's, and she had to sit and listen through that. Then she got to the airport and realized that she was 30 minutes early. Happy, breathing a sigh of relief, she sat down. She thought to herself, 30 minutes, I don't have to listen to anybody, I can do what I want, I can sit here, read my book, and not be bothered. No sooner she opened her book, and an elderly female voice said to her, I bet it's cold in Chicago. I suppose, Irma said. I haven't been in Chicago for 3 years, the woman said. My son lives there. That's nice. Then the woman continued, my husband's body is on this plane. We were married for 53 years. I don't drive, you see, and the funeral director was so nice he drove me to the airport today. Irma recalls her voice droned on. Here was a woman, she didn't want any money, advice, or counsel. All she wanted was somebody to listen. And in desperation, she had turned to a total stranger with a story. She continued until they announced it was time to board the plane, and although they sat in different sections, As Irma was hanging up her coat and the lady sat down, she heard her say to the person next to her, "I bet it's cold in Chicago." There are just so many of us who just need somebody sometimes to listen on, to focus, and to hear what we have to say. I think that Jesus affirmed her not only by what he did, but also by what he said. When he said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you, go in peace." What a kind of an affirmation that had to have been. An outcast, a woman who could not fellowship with other people, who hadn't felt human touch in forever. And now Jesus says, "Your faith has healed you, you can go away in peace." Jesus expressed kindness through affirmation. And he did it through acceptance as well. In 49 through 56, while Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue the ruler. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother the teacher any more." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just believe and she'll be healed." When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John, and James. The child's father and mother, meanwhile, were wailing and mourning for her. "Stop wailing," Jesus said. "She's not dead, but she is asleep." They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and he said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood. Then Jesus told him to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anybody what had happened. You know, some of the most disturbing words in English language are 4 words that we like to speak but hate to hear. They're the words, "I told you so." It's fun to speak them, and we relish it when we're the ones saying that. But it's very difficult to hear them, isn't it? Now, remember, those people outside the house mocked Jesus. They had laughed at him before he went in to raise the girl back to life again. Now, if I were Jesus, I know what I would have done. I would have raised the girl back to life, and then I would have taken her by the hand, and we would have walked up and down in front of all those people, the mourners. And I would have said, "I told you so." That would have been a lot of fun. That's me, though. And sometimes it's not so much... Jesus didn't do that. He was concerned about how they felt. And then kindness, he tries to parents, "Don't tell anyone what's happened." He didn't try to get even. He didn't try to get back. He didn't try to glorify himself. He just said, "Leave it the way it is." Oh, I can't remember his name. Somebody once told me that they heard a preacher say, "I have never had to apologize for my position, but I have oftentimes had to apologize for my disposition." Have you ever had to apologize for your disposition? The story that goes with that was about a Texan who was 6'10", who walked into a McDonald's, slammed down his big fist, and said to the girl behind the counter, "I want half a Big Mac." She said, "What?" He said, "I want half a Big Mac, and I want it now." Not being sure what to do, she said, "Excuse me for just a minute," and headed back to her manager without realizing the man was following right behind her. She got back to the manager and she said, "There's a big klutz out there who's dumber than lead, and he has ordered half a Big Mac." And just about that moment she suddenly realized he was standing there behind her, and quickly she added, "And this gentleman wants the other half." Sometimes you have to think fast, and what you say is important, but how you say it can even be more important. In fact, Jesus didn't want to embarrass them or get even with them. Speaks volumes. And it teaches us how we're to respond to each other as well. I read a story which I think fits this um, right now, and I'm gonna read it to you because I don't want to mess it up. Some construction workers were building a high-rise across the street from a hospital. As they were working on the third floor, they noticed a little girl standing in the third-floor window of the hospital watching them work. One day they looked across and saw the little girl hold up a poster that said, "My name is Lisa. What are your names?" The next day the construction workers came back with some poster board and magic marker, and they all wrote down their names. "My name is Bob. My name is Bill. My name is Harry. How old are you?" Next day the little girl held up a sign that said, "I am 7 years old. How old are you?" Well, this went on for several days, but one day they noticed that Lisa wasn't at her normal place, in the window. So at break time one of the workers called the hospital and asked for a third-floor nurse. He asked if she could tell him anything at all about Lisa. The nurse said that Lisa had taken a turn for the worse and was now in ICU. So the workers pooled their money, bought some flowers and a card, and wrote a note on it and sent it to Lisa in ICU. Several days passed, and then another sign appeared in the window. "Lisa passed away. Thank you for caring and for your kindness." Love is kind. We need to learn to be kind to one another, even as God has been kind to us through Jesus Christ, and has offered him as a sacrifice for our sins. And he offers everybody that choice. He offers everybody the choice to respond to his love. So offer his invitation. Come to him. Ask him to help you. Ask him to forgive you. I mean, the free things that we can do as an act of kindness is just so easy. Praying, writing notes across the board to somebody who's sick. If you happen to be a construction worker, I mean, if you don't have a lot of money, send a card in the mail. Let somebody know you're thinking of them. A phone call. "Hey, I was thinking of you today. How are you doing?" An elderly woman when you're at the grocery store with a bag of groceries. Offer to carry them for her. Offer to help an elderly lady or couple across the sidewalk. Hold the door open for somebody. Thank somebody. You see soldiers or men in uniform walking in the street, thank them for the service to our country. Thank your pastors for all they do, because they do so much more than we ever even have a clue. And they're under so much stress. We often put our needs ahead of everybody else's, and we don't stop to think of the stress that they're under. Many things that we can do. If you have a computer and you have friends on there that you haven't talked to in forever, send them a note, send them a message. It doesn't cost anything. If you're a husband and you have a wife, walk up behind her, put your arms around her waist, and go, "Honey, I love you. Thank you for everything that you do." If you're a wife, do it for your husband. No, it's the small things that count. If you take a lunch to work, if your spouse makes it, or if you make it for your spouse, put a little note in it. "I love you. I hope you have a great day at work." No, if your spouse is working all day and you're home, cook them dinner so when they come home they don't have to. Clean the house for them. Do a load of laundry. Put the kids to bed for a change. The small things matter. No, pray for people. But whatever you do, let go and let God. Because once you do that, you won't think twice. And if you stop to think about it, whether we realize it or not, we do many, many, many acts of kindness a day that we don't even realize that we do. So, let go, let God, and have a great night.